Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
All right, so buckle up a little bit for this deep dive. We're going to World War II.
Okay.
But specifically, we're going into the Warsaw Uprising of 44.
Yeah.
And we've got, articles, we've got firsthand accounts. We even found a podcast episode on this.
Oh, wow.
So this is going deep.
Yeah.
This isn't just a quick history lesson. This is about a city, like a whole nation, basically, that decided to fight like hell against really impossible odds.
And what makes the Warsaw Uprising so compelling, I think, so heartbreaking, is it wasn't just about, throwing off Nazi occupation. It was about the Polish people trying to take control of their own destiny, right?
Yeah.
In a world where the line between liberation and domination was getting very blurry.
Okay, so set the stage for us. It's August 1944.
Okay.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Where are we at in the war, and what makes the Polish Home Army choose this moment to rise up?
So August 1944, the tide of the war is turning, but the Nazis are still a very brutal force to be reckoned with.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in occupied Warsaw. The Polish Home Army, which is loyal to the exiled Polish government in London, they see the writing on the wall, right?
Okay.
The Nazis, they're on their way out, but the Soviets are closing in from the east, and they're bringing their own, let's call it liberation.
Right, because, from their perspective, trading one totalitarian regime for another isn't exactly a victory lap?
Exactly. Yeah, they're facing this impossible choice, right? Do they just accept Soviet domination?
Right.
Or do they fight, a desperate battle for a chance at true independence?
Wow.
They choose the latter, launching the uprising on August 1st, aiming to liberate Warsaw before the Red Army gets there.
So they're, talk about between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
That is, and this is where Stalin's role or lack thereof, this is crucial.
Absolutely.
Because his army is right there.
Yeah, they're right on the outskirts of Warsaw. And this is, I think, one of the most debated aspects of this entire uprising.
Yeah.
Stalin's forces were close enough to intervene.
Right.
Potentially tip the scales in favor of the Poles.
Wow.
But they halt, they stop.
Why?
Well, officially, the Soviets claim that providing aid was impracticable.
Okay.
Logistical challenges, all that. We even have a document here from a Soviet official stating that.
Yeah.
But historians have some serious doubts about that explanation.
Yeah, come on. It's hard not to see it as a power play by Stalin, especially given how he wanted to control Eastern Europe after the war.
Exactly, and that's what a lot of historians argue, that it was a very deliberate move by Stalin.
Right.
The Polish Home Army, they were staunchly anti-communist.
Right.
They were a direct threat to his post-war plans.
Wow.
And so allowing them to be crushed by the Nazis, it's brutal, but it's strategic. It makes sense for Stalin.
It's cold, but it makes sense.
It's cold.
And to really understand how deep this distrust is, we need to rewind a bit.
Yeah. Because
there's a big elephant in the room here, and that's the Katyn Forest Massacre.
Yes. This event cast a huge shadow over the entire uprising. In 1940, the Soviets massacred thousands of Polish officers, intellectuals, in the Katyn Forest.
Wow.
They blamed it on the Nazis for years.
It's awful.
It was a lie that held until 1943 when the truth came out.
Right.
Can you imagine the impact of that?
Talk about betrayal.
Yeah.
Knowing that, how could the Poles in 44 believe for a second that Stalin was going to come to their aid?
Exactly. It highlights just how deep the divisions were.
Wow.
The Poles saw Stalin for what he was, somebody who would sacrifice them to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
And that makes the decisions made by people like Churchill and Roosevelt even more agonizing.
So the Polish Home Army is fighting like crazy for their city, for their vision of a free Poland.
Right.
And they're looking to the West for help.
Yeah.
What's the response like from Churchill and Roosevelt?
Well, they actually have very different responses, which I think highlights just how much pressure they were both under. Churchill, he's furious about Stalin just sitting back.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We've got telegrams from August 44, and he's practically begging Stalin to help.
Begging? What do you mean? Give me some of the actual... what's the tone in those telegrams?
Well, one in particular from August 4th, 1944.
Right.
Churchill's like, I am most anxious that you should drop even a few supplies.
Wow.
He even offered to use Soviet air bases for British and American planes.
Wow.
Just to airdrop supplies to the Poles.
He's like, just let us use your bases, we'll do it.
He understood what was at stake, not just militarily, but morally.
Yeah.
And Stalin says no.
He just flat out refuses.
He says it's impossible, logistically,
Right.
that his air forces are stretched too thin.
Right.
But you can tell Churchill's getting frustrated.
Oh, I bet.
He sees the Poles, a loyal ally being abandoned.
Yeah.
And it's rough.
So, wow. And this is all while the war is still going on.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like they've won yet?
Nope.
What about Roosevelt? How's he handling this whole Warsaw situation?
Roosevelt's in a tough spot.
Okay.
He needs Stalin to win in Europe.
Right.
And, very importantly, to help finish the fight against Japan.
Right, because they're still fighting on two fronts.
Exactly. And on top of that, he's already thinking about the post-war world.
Okay.
Where, he wants the United Nations to be the big player.
Right.
And alienating Stalin now could mean none of that happens.
It's all at risk.
Yeah.
So he's thinking long term.
He's trying to play the long game.
But, man, that must have been hard. To know what's happening in Warsaw and be like, well, got to play it cool.
For sure. And we do see Roosevelt urging Stalin to reconsider.
Okay.
He's saying he's concerned about the Polish people and all that.
Right.
But you can tell, compared to Churchill's telegrams, it's just not the same.
Not as forceful.
Exactly. Yeah. Roosevelt's walking a tightrope,
Right.
Trying to support Poland without, pushing Stalin too far.
Yeah, because he needs Stalin.
Yeah.
Oh, man, what a situation.
It's real politic in action.
It really is, like the tough choices of wartime.
Yeah.
And, for the Polish Home Army, those choices meant they were on their own.
Yeah, pretty much.
They fought hard, but it was an uphill battle from the start.
It really was, and they were incredibly brave, but they were up against overwhelming odds.
Reading the accounts of the fighting, it's just brutal.
Oh, it's awful.
63 days of just constant urban warfare.
And in the end, the uprising is crushed.
Crushed.
Over 200,000 Polish fighters and civilians dead.
God, it's unimaginable.
It's devastating, Warsaw, which was a beautiful, vibrant city,
right,
reduced to rubble. Just completely devastated.
And for the survivors, the ones who weren't sent to camps,
Right, they avoided one nightmare.
Yeah.
Only to walk into another.
Because now, instead of the Nazis, they've got
a Soviet-imposed communist regime.
Right.
Handpicked by Stalin. And a lot of them,
yeah,
involved in the Katyn Forest massacre.
Oh, wow. So it's like the thing they were fighting to avoid?
Exactly.
Or it happened anyway.
It's tragic, and it really highlights the legacy of the uprising.
Because it's not just a military defeat, right?
No, it's a turning point.
Like for the whole world.
In the 20th century, yeah.
It's like you can draw a straight line from the ruins of Warsaw in 44 to the Cold War.
Absolutely. The Iron Curtain, the decades of tension.
All of that distrust, that resentment, that feeling of betrayal. It's like it takes root in Warsaw and then spreads out.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Wow.
And at the heart of it all is Poland.
Right. Caught in the middle.
Stuck between East and West.
Man, what a story.
The Warsaw Uprising becomes this symbol of their struggle and that spirit of resistance, and never really went away.
Even against those odds.
Even then.
Man, when you lay it out like that, it's just, I don't know, it's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
You think about those people. They rose up with such hope.
They did.
And then to be kind of like crushed between these two giant forces, it makes you wonder, what if things had been different?
It's impossible not to ask those questions.
Right.
What if, maybe the West had done more? What if Stalin had actually helped? Obviously, we can't change the past.
Right.
But thinking about those possibilities, that's how we learn.
And there were other options, right?
Yeah.
We saw those telegrams from Churchill. He was practically begging to help. Was there really nothing else they could do?
Well, some historians argue that, especially the U.S., they were so focused on the bigger picture. Defeating the Nazis,
right,
creating a stable world afterward.
Right.
That they kind of, I don't know, the needs of the Polish resistance got lost.
It's like they were a casualty of the bigger picture.
In a way, yeah.
Man, those calculations, those compromises.
Yeah,
it's
tough choices.
Really tough.
Yeah.
It's like history isn't a movie. There are no good guys, bad guys.
It's messy.
It's really messy. And I think the Warsaw Uprising just shows that.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important to talk about.
Yeah, it's not just a history lesson.
It's more than that.
It's like a reminder to be curious, to question what we're told, and to not, take our freedoms for granted.
Exactly. We have to learn from these things, understand the choices that were made and how it affects us today.
So for someone listening, really thinking about all this, what's the most important thing to remember about the Warsaw Uprising?
Remember the courage of the Polish people?
Yeah.
They were facing impossible odds.
Yeah, they did.
And they still chose to fight for freedom.
Amazing.
They wanted to decide their own future. And even though they lost, their spirit, it didn't break.
It's incredible.
It's really inspired.
It's a story that, man, it needs to be told over and over.
It does.
Because it's complicated. It's got all those tough parts, you know.
It does.
But it reminds us that freedom is precious. And it's not free. And it's not guaranteed.
It never is.
And, I mean, if this deep dive gets people to think more about it, to learn more about the people who fought there, the impact it had,
that's what we want.
then we've done something good.
We've done our job.
Because history, it's not just the past, right?
No, it's alive.
It's still going on.
Yeah.
And the Warsaw Uprising, all the tragedy, the heroism, it still speaks to us.
It does.
And sometimes, to understand the world today,
you got to go back. See where it all began.
Listen to those echoes.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.